story.
Welcome back. You're watching Inside Politics. It's 13 minutes past 12 p.m. Good afternoon from wherever you're tuning in from. In case you're just joining us, we continue with the deliberations right here on the round table. Right before the break, we were conversing on some of the austerity measures taken by the government so far, with some of the panelists quoting it as a drop in the ocean, others mentioning that this is a step in the right direction. But we happen to be congregated right here on July 7th. That is synonymous in Kenya's political history. And even as we perhaps echo what has been said before, Kisia, because you have institutional memory, something that I might lack, you know. And June 7th, 1990 is of significant importance, as I said, pushing for multi-party democracy right here in the country, amongst other things. We saw then leaders at the forefront, the Young Turks, James Orengo, you name it, even some older politicians, Masinde Muliro, were involved in the agitation then. Can you draw similarities, parallels between the protests on Sabasaba and what we've witnessed in the country currently? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Yeah, I think you can draw some parallels. Of course, what differs is the strategy that has been applied. And of course, we must appreciate those who fought for the second liberation, including the late Matiba, Charles Rubia, Martin Shikuku, and many others who might have lost their lives when they were agitating for the second liberation. And of course, that bore some fruits. Section 2A was repealed by Moi. You can imagine Moi repealing Section 2A. So that was a very, very significant achievement that group actually delivered to Kenyans. Now, when you look at Gen Z, it's the same thing. What are they fighting for? They are fighting for now they're fighting for elimination of corruption, tribalism, good governance, but they're applying totally different strategies. You know, those guys, of course, and the Gen Z is a mix of strategy. They're on the streets, they are not violent. I'm not saying that those who fought for the second liberation were violent, but these ones were very peaceful. You saw how they were going about their issues. But what was more significant with the Gen Z, application of technology, the ability to mobilize people, the ability to communicate in a very efficient and effective manner, not like before. You know, I think by the time Orengo probably was able to get Jacom, and Jacom was able, it took time. But these guys, they at lightning speed, they're able to change strategy, they're able to change tact, and I think that is what for Gen Z. Yes. But they are fighting for the same thing. The second liberation fought for good governance. This generation is fighting for the same thing, good governance of our country. Of course, within that context, then we talk about corruption, tribalism, nepotism, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So, but I think, okay,
there are similarities.
There are similarities between the two generations, but the ultimate goal is the same.
Okay.
Good governance.
Well, we should appreciate, Philip, that and Gen Z, the young people, should appreciate that they did not start liberation movement in Kenya with tremendous respect to their approach or their style. This is what especially opposition leaders have been fighting for. It is not the first time it's happening. The only change to this is, like you said, they are able to communicate with each other quickly. But let's appreciate also those who started these movements. You remember, everybody was tear-gassed in this country. William Ruto himself was at one time tear-gassed. So governments are not about to acquiesce or agree with the citizens easily because of greed for power. And in fact, I was thinking that this William Ruto now is the president of the moment. I mean, he should be able, not only like he has scrapped, he should be able to listen to the citizens, even if it will involve him actually finally saying, I am exiting the stage. Because he said in 2019 that we will change the conversation. So if he can change the conversation, he can as well say, I have done my part, and I'm willing to let you carry somebody else carry the mantle. Yeah, you shouldn't be afraid about that. I know it's a difficult proposal.
Is that not a pipe dream?
It's an ideal scenario. It's not realistic.
No, someone can just leave office. I mean, will he be hungry? No. Is he not popular? Doesn't he have the money? I think it's greed for power.
It's about power.
It's greed for power. And by the way, somebody said that when you become president, you are a totally different person in terms of you are actually not the you and me, but the way you use that wealth of you being so elevated is the problem in Africa. And I think he should be willing to say, let me go, instead of bloodshedding and you know, killing people and inconveniencing businesses and making us, you know. And this thing of you saying that the economy has grown, you know, you have some set of economy with the IMF and World Bank where they reassure you that you are doing fine, and we can't feel it.
No, you felt on the ground.
Wakili, forgive our little brother here, because if the economy is growing, it is growing on their side. And you know, with a pinch of, on a light note, the growth is above the West.
There are people right now.
Let's put this matter about Sabasaba to rest, because still with institutional memory, have the Gen Z awakened the spirit of Sabasaba through their agitation for transparency in government? Yeah.
People are looking at Sabasaba in 1990, I think, and they are looking at today and saying, oh, is there any parallel? One or two things stand out. The first is the country around that time had reached a point where we were losing our country. The elections of 1988, where Moi introduced Mlolongo, queuing, where the long lines, the queue, the person with the longest queue loses to the person with just about 3-4 people. Gidraf Mwaru comes to mind, and so on, Kiharu. Then it was, I think it was Kiharu that time. It has changed from Biri. And the excesses of government at that time, the hubris, the arrogance, the raw thefts, the primitive accumulation, the opulence, it had gotten so bad, we were losing the country. Now, fast forward to now, that's where we are. The sort of theft we are witnessing in this country, the kind of leadership we have, the arrogance, the opulence. Now we live in a country where people are discussing the cost of belts. How low can a country go? That we are discussing the shoes our leaders are wearing and the watches they are wearing. I don't have one. Look at how low we are. So that is a big parallel. Now, the leadership then didn't want to listen. The leadership today is not listening, doesn't want to listen. And finally, Sabasaba took us almost by surprise. And Gen Z has also taken us by surprise. Why? Matiba, Orengo, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, and the rest of those gentlemen, maybe a lady here or there, those who have died, God rest their souls in peace. They did the unthinkable. The unthinkable. They did the unthinkable. Even to be able to call for a meeting in Kamukunji, in those days, we are not talking about courage. We are talking about something out of this world at that time. And you can see what happened to them, a lot of them. Yes. How they were detained and what, and those kind of things. Look at 2024. Who would have thought these young boys and girls will do what none of us could have imagined could be done? Could mobilize in a way that could shame Raila's mobilization. Who would have imagined that? Just 3-4 months ago, if somebody told you, without Raila, you could get those numbers in the streets. And finally, the last parallel you want to note is that Moi gave in. Signs round and about indicate William Ruto is equally going to give in. The only thing I would wish to say, all these things sometimes come at the cost of unnecessary human lives and human sacrifice. It's like all wars in history. All wars in history, almost all of them. At the end of each war, sometimes when millions or hundreds of thousands of people have died, people sit down to do what they would have done to avoid the war. We did that in Sabasaba. Many homes were destroyed. There are men who lost their wives. There are homes which were destroyed. Ask Nakoigo, Amwera, and the rest of these people. People died. Today we are repeating the same. And one would only hope and wish and pray and urge our president, because we have the benefit of history. We have the benefit of history. Why can't we do the right thing? Why would the president find it so difficult to dissolve government? So that finally he will do it. You know, in that video I said it. He will do it. The president will dissolve cabinet.
So it's no matter of if.
No,
it's a matter of
it's
when.
not if. He will dissolve cabinet.
Okay.
Jesse, I wish Prof finished into why, and I'm hoping that you can actually help us when you come back. Why does the government refuse to listen? This is the very critical conversation. And by the way, this goes into the core of the historical problems we have in this country. Like you correctly pointed out, in 1990, the government did not listen. If you go to 1978, the government did not listen. Now in 2024, the government refuses to listen. That is the core of this country's political and economic problems. What the people feel is that resources are not being shared across the board. And that's one major problem. They feel that you're taking resources to your cronies and probably to your tribesmen, and you're not allowing enterprise among all tribes of the country. That is where the problem is. So if we can have somebody really to give a proper report, why the president, and not only this president, why do presidents refuse to listen? Because they want to award. You heard of shareholding governments. Now that has toned it down because he has his own problems. So I think, I don't know, but I would speak quite a bit on this, but that is the fundamental, the primary problem of this country. If the government was quickly listening do something in agriculture, do something on water, do something on roads, on health, you see doctors picketing every other time in towns and all that. If the government listens, then life for every normal Kenyan will be normal. Then nobody will be interested in what's happening in state.
Can I put a footnote there?
Okay.
The footnote is this. What you are raising is exactly what happens in the West, where leaders in developed democracies pay great attention to what the people are thinking. That's why ratings of a president is a very important issue in America and elsewhere. Rating. What do people think? The opinion polls are very, very important in the West. And that's what we don't care.
In
and
this
it doesn't
country.
mean to us. I will
Jesse,
explain,
let
but I'll
me-
let you
Jesse,
answer.
Jesse,
It's been a while since you conversed.
okay.
Let's hear from him.
So Jesse, Philip, you've mentioned that you, in your opinion, you don't think that the economy has grown, and I would want to ask you a question. What indication gives you this notion? Because over the past 1 year, our economy has grown by 5%, 5.5%. And the metrics are out there. And you see, the reason why most of us are going to the streets, it's because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And that is what we need to demystify. For example, if you look at the amount of jobs that have been created in our economy, for example, the housing project, it has created more than 169,000 jobs. And it is important to note that for every dollar that we invest in the housing project, we receive 1.5 USD in our economy. If you look at the digital space, which has employed more than 160,000 youths, and not only youths, I don't want to center it on youths, but citizens.
Okay.
If you look at some of the opportunities that are there online, the free trainings, Of course, the government is looking to growing the number of jobs in the digital space from 160,000 to around 1 million by 2027. And this means growth to our economy. So I think it's a bit unfair to say that we haven't experienced such growth. And to take you back to the unga issue, you have mentioned that you expected the Kenya Kwanza government to reduce the prices of unga within 1 month of its
Not
inception.
It is a promise made by the president.
But let us look at this issue logically. We were spending 3.5 billion to subsidize unga only. We were using 7.65 billion to subsidize fuel. That's around more than 11 billion. And what the government is trying to do is to subsidize production. How can you subsidize production within 1 month and expect results from it? So it is a process. There's a lot that the government is doing. And I'd say that we are in the right trajectory. Just like I mentioned, it is evidenced even by our inflation. We are below the 5% midterm plan 4 target of 5%. That is coupled by the reduction of the prices of basic commodities, the commodities that are used by the normal mwananchi. So the government is in the right trajectory, the economy is growing, and we foresee even more great opportunities in the coming future.
Thank you, my brother.
We should feel it.
This is the representative of government talking to Kenyans, and I didn't expect anything better.
So you're already
it is not a listening government. And like my brother Wakilia said, and even Proper said, you know, in the developed economies, the leadership listens to the people. They listen to the customer. In private sector, the customer.
Is that what is happening currently?
In the private sector, where I worked for more than 2 decades, we listen, we respond to the customer. You do not come up with your own prescription. In the case of my president, Samoei Ruto, he is listening to himself. He's suffering from what we call the big L syndrome, the Bwana Mkubwa syndrome. He thinks and believes in himself, rightfully so, that he has the prescription of Kenya without
talking about the first president to go on X space.
Forget about going to X space.
To listen to the
that is just a platform.
Mwananchi.
It's just a platform. You can listen to Mwananchi through various platforms. X is one of them. The point I'm making is, if this president was a listening president, he should have been responding. He would not be talking of things like my plan. My plan. You know, your plan is limited and it should be confined to yourself and your family. He should be talking about our plan, our shared vision, because that is where he is. We have only given him a responsibility for the time being to provide leadership so that we as Kenyans can achieve our aspired vision, which is Vision 2030. Now let me come back to the issue of the growth in economic growth.
Briefly, yes.
Okay? You know, during Kibaki's time when he took over, when an economy is growing, it's not about figures. When an economy is growing, people feel it.
Thank you.
People will not be on the streets if people are working their jobs. You are talking about creation of 130,000 jobs, which we don't even know. Most of them are manual jobs. Okay? You are talking about 130. How many of our youths from the universities, especially colleges and what have you, are without jobs? Actually, we have about 5.5 million Kenyans who have no jobs. President William Ruto has now been the president for 23 months. He has only created 130 jobs through this thing that you're calling housing. Let me remind you, my brother, that this housing concept, this housing thing, was a creation of my administration. We are the ones who came up with affordable housing. We know how we wanted to roll it out. The idea was not to make money for ourselves, but to create homes for the people, in this case, for the people of Nairobi. So, my brother, you don't have to struggle If an economy is doing well, like it did well during Kibaki's time, we felt it. Mwananchi felt it. We were not on the streets.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
But so long as the economy is doing poorly, you will find us on the streets.
Philip,
Yes.
let's be fair
We need to take a break,
let's be
gentlemen.
fair to,
We even
let's
haven't
be fair
talked
to,
about
let's be
the-
fair to UDA. What we are saying, please, is tell the head of state that citizens simply want to access services easily. You don't have to clean roads so that we die. Let them just listen. The people are saying, please, there's too much corruption in the county governments, let it go down so we can get services. These are very honest demands by citizens. It's not even about whether he himself has a plan or not. Kenyans simply want to access services. They are not accessing.
Okay.
And when you talk about economies growing, you know, it's very unfortunate to describe an eye. We all can see. So there is no need for so much semantics and academics in terms of is the economy growing. We simply want to feel it. Even without opposing you as Anthony, I think the head of state needs to understand that Kenyans are not happy because they don't have food on the table in their houses.
Okay, gentlemen, allow us to take a short break because as we come back, we open our phone calls and our phone lines for our viewers back at home to give us their sentiments on the issues we've been able to canvass right here on the round table. But let me read one or two tweets on X. Douglas Muchamu says, we requested the president to disband his cabinet, yet he has not complied. We have implored the president to appoint capable Kenyans to government roles, but he persistently sidesteps the matter. From my perspective, the president has fallen short of fulfilling our demands. So this is a Kenyan who says perhaps he hasn't had what we've said. Someone else mentions, D. Brian says, to fight corruption in Kenya, we need leaders who genuinely commit to change and transparency. It's time for action and accountability. Elvin Omoyo says, which debt have we been paying so far? And if we need an audit to be done to determine how much we owe, it means we have been paying debts that we don't even know. So there's a level of insincerity in that particular point. Allow us to take that short break. Feel free to call. The lines are displayed on our screens right now. When we come back, we'll be listening to you back at home. Stay with Inside Politics.